When my father's estate was divided, my name was erased from the will for this reason. Stepmom forged the will, fake nurse name exposed, and I fought for Dad's company family betrayal. Inheritance fraud real story now. I've replayed that afternoon 1,000 times, and it still feels like a bad prank with expensive furniture. The attorney, Mr. Collins, had been reading my dad's will for what felt like forever. I kept timing it on the clock above the conference table. 19 minutes and counting. My stepmother, Marla, was mentioned over and over like she was the only person Dad had ever loved. My younger brother Ethan's name popped up a few times. Even Dad's dog Walker got a small trust. But me, Jason Reed, his only daughter, the one who ran his company while he was sick? Nothing. Collins folded the papers with that careful lawyer neatness, like he was closing a menu instead of my entire life. Ethan whispered, "There has to be a mistake," and squeezed my hand so hard my rings bit into my skin. The room smelled like lemon polish and money, and all I could think was how I'd spent 12 years helping Dad build Reed Logistics from 2 delivery vans into a regional freight business worth at least $12 million. When the liver cancer hit, the doctors said 5 months. He fought for 7. I moved into his house, slept on a couch near his room, and handled payroll between hospital visits. Dad used to tell me over burnt coffee that the company would be mine one day. "You're the future of this family," he'd say. My mom died when I was in college, and for years, it was just Dad, Ethan, and me. Then Marlo appeared at a charity auction wearing a dress that cost more than my car. She was 45, Dad was 68, and suddenly our quiet life turned into spa weekends and designer remodels. Collins cleared his throat. "The most recent will was signed in February," he said. "Mrs. Reed receives all properties, all business interests, and all accounts. She has chosen to gift each of you $25,000 at her discretion." Marla dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue that hadn't seen a single tear. "Your father believed I would guide things wisely," she said in that soft voice she used with bankers. My stomach twisted. Dad had been confused by February. Some days, he thought I was my mother. I asked Collins for proof of mental competency from that month, and Marla's smile flickered like a bad light bulb. "Dr. Bennett evaluated him," Collins said. "Everything was proper." I knew Dr. Bennett. He played tennis with Collins and Marla at the country club. I'd seen them clinking glasses while Dad slept upstairs. The puzzle pieces started sliding into ugly shapes. "Where was this signed?" I asked. "At your father's residence," Collins replied. "Witnessed by Mrs. Reed's cousin, Laura Miles, and a home aide, Natalie Price." Ethan went rigid beside me. We'd had exactly 3 aides during Dad's final months. I'd cooked meals for all of them, learned their kids' names, and bought them Christmas mugs. Natalie Price wasn't one of them. I opened my phone and scrolled through contacts. Carla Mendez, Hope Alvarez, Denise Carter. That was the whole list. No Natalie. Not even close. "I've never heard of her," I said. "Not once." Marla was watching me the way a cat watches a glass on the edge of a table, calm but ready. Collins started talking about paperwork, but the words sounded underwater. I scrolled again, slower this time, as the name might magically appear if I believed hard enough. 3 aides. Only 3. I knew every laugh, every perfume, every complaint about Dad's stubborn TV remote. "So who exactly is Natalie Price?" I asked. No answer. Just the hum of the air conditioner and Marla's perfectly still face. In that moment, I understood the will wasn't just unfair. It was engineered. I didn't sleep the night after the will reading. I kept hearing Collins's voice in my head, calm and polished, saying Natalie Price like it was the most ordinary name in the world. Ethan crashed on my couch, and we spent half the night passing a bottle of cheap red wine back and forth, trying to make sense of how our lives had flipped in under an hour. By morning, we had a plan, or at least something that felt like one. First stop was Dad's house, the place Marla now legally owned but hadn't moved back into yet. The air still smelled like his aftershave and the lemon cleaner Denise Carter used on the countertops. I stood in the hallway staring at the framed photos. Mom in the 80s with big hair, Ethan at his high school graduation, me shaking hands with Dad the day Reed Logistics opened its second warehouse. "Feels wrong being here," Ethan muttered. "Feels worse not being here," I said. We started with the practical stuff. I pulled out the binder where I'd kept everything during Dad's illness: nurse schedules, medication logs, and insurance forms. I'd been obsessive about it because the doctors were always asking for dates and dosages. 3 aides. Exactly 3. Carla from September to November, Hope from November to January, and Denise from January until the end of April. I still had their handwritten notes, little smiley faces next to Dad's blood pressure readings. No Natalie Price anywhere. Ethan paced the kitchen. Maybe she was temporary? Like a fill-in? I would have known, I said. I was here almost every day. He stopped by the fridge and stared at a magnet shaped like a lobster. So what? They invented a person. The idea sounded crazy out loud, but it fit too neatly. I called Collins's office at 10 on the dot. His assistant tried to give me the runaround, but I've negotiated with truck suppliers who make lawyers look cuddly. Tell him Jason Reed is on the line, and I'm not going away, I said. 2 minutes later, Collins picked up, all smooth professionalism. Ms. Reed, I understand this is an emotional time. Who is Natalie Price? I cut in. A pause. Papers rustling. As I stated yesterday, she was the attending aide who witnessed. She never worked for my father. Another pause, longer this time. My information comes from the documents provided. Provided by Marla, I said. He didn't answer that. I asked for a copy of the will, the witness statements, everything. He said he'd consider the request and reminded me that Marla was now the executor. I hung up before I said something that would get me sued. Ethan looked at me like he'd just seen a ghost. He's protecting her. Or protecting himself, I said. That afternoon, I drove to the main Reed Logistics office, the place that used to feel like my second home. The receptionist, Tara, hugged me so hard I almost cried. Everyone's talking, she whispered. They don't understand what's happening. Neither did I. Marla had already installed a new interim manager, some guy named Victor who smelled like expensive cologne and knew nothing about freight routes. He gave me a tight smile in the conference room I designed myself. Mrs. Reed asked me to review operations, he said, tapping a tablet. There may be restructuring. Restructuring what? I asked. We've had record profits 3 years straight. He shrugged. New leadership, new vision. Translation, Marla wanted control. I walked through the warehouse afterward, greeting drivers who'd known me since I was a teenager. One of them, Big Tom, pulled me aside near the loading dock. Your dad would be rolling in his grave, he said. That woman's already talking about selling routes. My chest tightened. Those routes were Dad's pride, built one contract at a time. Selling them would gut the company. That evening, Ethan and I met Denise Carter at a diner off Route 7. She still wore her scrubs, even though she'd moved to a new client. When I told her about the will, her face went pale. Natalie Price? She repeated. Never heard that name. You're sure? Ethan asked. She laughed without humor. Honey, there were only 3 of us. We covered every shift. I'd remember another 8. I showed her the witness line from the photo I'd snapped of the document. Denise leaned closer, squinting. That signature looks weird, she said. Like someone copying cursive from a YouTube video. We sat there in the smell of burnt coffee, realizing how deep this might go. Denise told us something else. In February, right when the will was supposedly signed, Marla had insisted on being alone with Dad for a family day. Denise had been sent home early with pay. I thought it was sweet at the time, she said. Now it feels different. Different was one word for it. The next lead came from Hope Alvarez, who answered my call while grocery shopping. She remembered a woman visiting the house once, someone she assumed was a relative of Marla's. Tall, blonde highlights, strong perfume. Hope said over the sound of cartwheels. She kept asking about paperwork. Did she introduce herself? Maybe. I didn't catch it. I was focused on your dad. Tall, blonde, paperwork. It could have been anyone, but my gut screamed it was important. Ethan and I started digging online like amateur detectives. No professional license for Natalie Price in our state. No employment record with the home care agency. Social media accounts that looked created last month, all private. 2 blurry photos that could have been pulled from anywhere. It's a ghost, Ethan said, rubbing his eyes. A legal ghost. Meanwhile, Marla was everywhere. She showed up at the office in tailored suits, talking about modernizing the brand. She scheduled a board meeting without inviting me, even though I technically still held my management contract. I confronted her in the lobby 2 days after the reading. We need to talk, I said. She smiled that tight smile. Of course, Jason. I know this is an adjustment. Who is Natalie Price? For a split second, something cracked in her expression, like ice under a boot. A professional, she said lightly. Your father trusted her. My father trusted me, I shot back. People were watching, pretending not to. Marla lowered her voice. You're grieving. Don't make enemies you'll regret. It felt like a threat wrapped in silk. That night, I found one more piece of the puzzle. I was going through Dad's email on the old laptop he'd used for invoices, and buried in the spam folder was a message from February, a confirmation for a notary service scheduled at the house. The notary's name? L. Miles. Laura Miles, the cousin who'd witnessed the will. I Googled her and nearly dropped the laptop. She wasn't just Marla's cousin. She'd lost her notary license 3 years ago for irregular practices. Ethan read the screen over my shoulder. You've got to be kidding. I felt that cold running through my veins again. The next morning, I went to the county clerk's office and requested the filed copy of the will. The clerk, a tired woman with purple glasses, handed me a folder without drama, like she was passing a library book. There it was in black and white. My father's shaky signature, the witnesses, the date. Everything looked official. Too official. I asked if there was a video of the signing and any additional documentation. She said not usually for private residences. Outside on the courthouse steps, I called Dr. Bennett's office pretending to be scheduling an appointment. When I casually mentioned the February evaluation, the receptionist hesitated. I don't see an in-person visit that month, she said. Only a telehealth check. Telehealth. Dad barely knew how to answer his phone by then. Things started happening fast after that. Victor announced layoffs at Reed Logistics. 3 drivers, 2 dispatchers. Big Tom called me furious. Ethan found a moving company scheduled to pack Dad's study next week. Marla was erasing him piece by piece. Then yesterday something truly strange happened. I was leaving the grocery store when a woman approached me near my car. Late 30s, maybe, dark hair, nervous energy. Are you Jason Reed? She asked. Yes. She glanced around the parking lot like we were in a spy movie. I used to work with Laura Miles. The notary. My heart hammered. Okay. She's been bragging, the woman whispered, about a big favor she did for her cousin. Said it set her up for life. I asked her name. She wouldn't give it. Be careful, she said instead. Those people don't play fair. And then she walked away between the shopping carts as if she had never existed. I told Ethan, and he wanted to go straight to the police. I wasn't sure we had enough yet. Just pieces, suspicions, a fake aide, and a disgraced notary. But the tension is building everywhere. At the office, at Dad's house, even between Ethan and me, we snap at each other over stupid things like who drank the last soda. Grief mixed with fear does ugly stuff. Last night, I dreamed Dad was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to tell me something. But Marla kept turning up the radio louder, so I couldn't hear him. Today, Collins finally emailed the documents. Clean PDFs, perfect scans. Too perfect again. No rough edges, no coffee stains, nothing like the messy papers Dad lived with. I keep thinking about that day in February, the family day Denise was sent home from. About a telehealth call instead of a real exam. About a witness who lost her license and an aide whom no one can find. Something was staged in that house while I was out buying Dad's soup, which he barely ate. Ethan says we should hire a lawyer, a real shark. I've got a meeting tomorrow with one recommended by Big Tom's cousin. I'm terrified and furious in equal measure. Because if this was faked, it means the last months with Dad were being choreographed behind our backs. And if it wasn't faked, then the man who raised me chose to erase me. Either option hurts. I'll update again once I talk to the lawyer and we decide the next step. I'm not letting this drop, not after everything Dad and I built together. I owe him, and myself, more than that. I promised the final update soon. Final update. We finally sat in the same room, and the truth got ugly. I'm writing this with 3 empty coffee cups on the table and my phone buzzing every few minutes. A lot has happened since my last post, and I promised I'd come back with answers instead of just questions. The meeting with the new lawyer, her name is Karen Holt, was where everything started to tip over. She's not flashy like Collins. No silk ties, no country club smile. Just a woman with reading glasses on a chain who talks like she's already 10 steps ahead of everyone else. I laid the whole mess out for her. The fake aide, the disgraced notary, the telehealth evaluation, Marla pushing layoffs at Reed Logistics, all of it. Ethan sat beside me, twisting a paperclip into knots. Karen listened without interrupting, flipping through the documents I'd printed. When I finished, she said, "This smells." That was it. Not legal jargon. Just 2 words. She explained that contesting a will isn't like TV. No dramatic shouting in court, mostly paperwork and timelines. But the witness issue? That was serious. If Natalie Price didn't exist, and Laura Miles wasn't legally allowed to notarize anything. The whole document could crumble. First step, Karen said. We invite Mrs. Reed to a meeting. See what she's willing to say when someone who knows the law is in the room. So we set it up for last Thursday at Karen's office. Marla arrived 15 minutes late, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than my car's engine. Victor hovered behind her like a guard dog. Collins came too, of course, carrying a leather briefcase that looked surgically attached to his hand. Ethan squeezed my shoulder before we went in. No matter what she says, don't lose it. Easy advice. Hard to follow. Karen started calmly. We have concerns regarding the February execution of Mr. Reed's will, specifically the witnesses and the evaluation of capacity. Collins launched into a prepared speech about proper procedures, but Karen cut him off. Let's keep this simple. Who is Natalie Price? The room went quiet enough to hear the AC clicking. Marla folded her hands. She was a temporary aide. Very professional. Which agency employed her? Karen asked. A private contractor, Marla said smoothly. Karen slid a folder across the table. We've checked every license provider in the state. No record. Collins cleared his throat. Not all aides require. Stop, Karen said, not loud, just firm. If this woman were a medical professional in that home, there would be a trace. There isn't. Marla's jaw tightened. Are you accusing me of something? I'm asking questions, Karen replied. That's when I spoke up, voice shaking more than I wanted. You erased me from my own father's life. I deserve answers. Marla looked at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong meeting. Jason, your father made his choices. Did he? I asked. Or did you make them for him? Victor shifted in his chair. Collins looked at the ceiling like it might rescue him. Karen brought out the email about the notary appointment. Laura Miles lost her license in 2021. Any document she notarized afterward is invalid. For the first time, Marla didn't have a quick reply. The meeting ended with promises of further review, which basically meant everyone needed time to figure out how bad this was going to get. Outside, Ethan let out a breath he'd been holding all week. Did you see her face? Yeah, I said. She knows we're onto something. 2 days later, the bomb went off. Karen filed a formal challenge with the probate court, and that meant subpoenas. Real ones. For phone records, bank transfers, and the home care agency logs. That's when the ghost of Natalie Price finally got a body. Turns out the name belonged to a woman in Nevada who'd never set foot in our state. Someone had used her identity to create a one-day employment record with a shell company tied to, surprise, Laura Miles's husband. When Karen told me on the phone, I had to sit on the kitchen floor. So it was fake, I whispered. Not just fake, she said. Organized. The next part hurt more than I expected. Bank records showed a payment of $30,000 transferred from Marla's personal account to Laura Miles the week after the will was signed. Labeled as consulting. Ethan punched the wall when he heard that. I just felt numb. We confronted Marla again, this time at Dad's house, because she insisted on neutral ground. The living room still had his recliner dented from years of use. Karen laid the evidence out on the coffee table like cards. Marla stared at the papers for a long time. Victor wasn't there. Collins wasn't there. Just the three of us and the ticking clock Dad used to complain about. Finally, she said, I was protecting the estate. From who? Ethan asked. His kids. She looked at him with something almost like pity. From the company collapsing. From you two fighting over it. Your father wanted peace. That's not peace, I said. That's theft. Her voice cracked then. First real emotion I'd ever seen from her. Do you know what it was like living with a man who was disappearing? Who called me by his first wife's name? I gave up my life to care for him. So did we, I shot back. She admitted parts without admitting everything. Said Dad had asked her to handle things because he was scared of the future. Claimed the will reflected his wishes even if the process was messy. Messy. That was her word for forging a witness. Karen told her straight. Either agree to mediation and a fair division, or we'd take it to court and pursue fraud charges. Marla went quiet again. The clock ticked. Ethan's foot bounced on the carpet. 50% of the company to Jason, Karen said. Trust for Ethan. The house was split after the sale. That's reasonable. Marla whispered, he loved me. I'm sure he did, I said. But he loved us too. We left without a deal that day, but the ground had shifted. The fallout at Reed Logistics was immediate. Victor tried to announce more layoffs, and the drivers basically revolted. Big Tom called me from the loading bay with shouting in the background. "They're walking out, kid." Half the crew. I drove there like my car was on fire. Seeing those trucks lined up with engines off nearly broke me. Those weren't just employees. They were people who taught me to change a tire and read a route map. I climbed onto a pallet and told them the truth. That the will was being challenged, that Marla didn't have the power she thought she did, that I was fighting to keep the company whole. One of the younger drivers yelled, "We trust you, Jason." I cried in front of 50 grown men and didn't even care. 3 weeks of legal chaos followed. Investigators interviewed Denise, Hope, and Carla. Every one of them confirmed no Natalie Price. The agency threatened to sue over the identity theft. Dr. Bennett admitted his February evaluation was a 10-minute video call while Dad was heavily medicated. Even he looked sick when Karen questioned him. The final meeting happened yesterday. Marla came in without makeup, looking older than I'd ever seen her. Collins looked like he hadn't slept in a month. She agreed to mediation. Here's what that means in real life, not legal fantasy. I'm getting control of Reed Logistics again, with a structured buyout for Marla over 10 years. Ethan gets a protected share and a seat on the board. The house will be sold, and we'll split it equally. Laura Miles is under criminal investigation. The shell company is already gone. The fake Natalie Price account vanished like smoke. Marla won't go to prison as part of the agreement, but she's paying back the money and stepping away from the business entirely. Consequences without a courtroom circus. After the papers were signed, she asked to speak to me alone on the steps outside. "I did love your father," she said quietly. "I believe you," I answered. "But you hurt his kids." She nodded, tears finally real. "I thought I was saving something. You were saving yourself." She didn't argue with that. Ethan and I went back to the warehouse afterward. The night shift was starting, forklifts beeping, radios crackling. It sounded like life moving again. Big Tom clapped me on the back. "Welcome home, boss. I'm not pretending everything is magically fixed. The company's bruised relationships are messy, and Dad is still gone. But the story he built isn't being rewritten by someone who never turned a wrench or loaded a single truck." Last night, Ethan and I sat on my couch as we used to when we were kids, eating terrible pizza. He said, "Think Dad would be proud?" "I hope so," I told him. Denise texted congratulations. Hope sent a string of prayer emojis. Even Tara at the office baked cupcakes shaped like little trucks. Life feels ordinary in the best possible way. I keep thinking about how close we came to losing everything because one person decided our family was an obstacle instead of a legacy. If any of you are dealing with something like this, don't stay quiet. Paper trails matter. People matter more. I'm heading to the warehouse after I post this to meet the drivers and talk about routes for next month. Real problems. Honest ones. Thank you to everyone who messaged advice and support. Strangers on the internet got me through some nights. This is probably the last time I'll update. The lawyers will keep doing their thing, and I'm going back to doing mine, running the company Dad and I built, side by side in memory, if not in person. I'll promise the final update soon.